In this session, we're going to be talking about Azure application development, the DevOps lifecycle, and some of the new funky platform services that are coming out in Azure. And for this one, I'm going to look to our infamous Chris Whitehead, who's our solution architect in the app dev space and in the platform space. So Chris, a couple of questions really. I mean, app dev as a concept's been around since the dawn of time. I mean, people have been developing applications even before computers existed, one would argue. So what is different now in this public cloud world?
Okay, so traditionally software development has been very on-premise. It's been very dedicated to one particular customer. Obviously the introduction of the cloud has globalized software development and to a certain extent deployment. The introduction of things such as app services allows us to quickly create web applications, mobile applications, and quickly deploy them to the cloud within minutes, which would traditionally take us weeks, months to do the full life cycle. Incorporating new features of Azure such as the VSO, Visual Studio Online, we're able to manage that in a much more cohesive manner and deploy that to any data center in the world. So typically development teams would use agile methodologies. We can completely manage that online, so the development team can actually be dispersed as well globally. And it just makes for a much more fluent idea to deployment model.
Okay. So what about architectures? So, you know, the cloud gives you a whole bunch of kind of predefined services and stuff now. So when you're building an application out, you've got access to a bunch of stuff that you once would have had to have written. So, I mean, does this fundamentally alter the way that you architect now in this modern kind of cloud world?
Yeah, so I try to think of it as a box of Lego. So we open up the lid and we have all the building blocks within there. We just need to take out the pieces that we need to construct our application. So the Azure platform offers us those predefined building blocks, such as mobile applications, web applications, communication mechanisms, and all we need to do is cherry pick the ones that we want and piece them together to create our application. Obviously the cloud gives us a totally different operational model, so we pay-as-you-go subscriptions, so if you use it, you pay for it. If you don't use it, then you stop paying for it. Compare that to a traditional development project. We would do a lot of spending up front to make sure that we've got those building blocks. Whether we use them or not, we've had to make that payment. So the cloud has turned it on the head and very much a pay-as-you-go model.
Okay, excellent. And so now to the kind of the DevOps cycle. Now, presumably the speed from idea you've already mentioned is quicker.
Yes.
I mean, so how does that affect the way that development teams would approach? You've covered the architecture. Now let's talk a little bit about the processes around getting stuff from conceptual into production, how that's been changed.
Yeah, so from initial idea, as I say, we can manage those ideas from an online tool, Visual Studio Online. It gives us the ability to quickly spin up applications and deploy them, and the whole life cycle from start to end. Building traditional infrastructure to host those applications would be a cost up front, sort of 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago. Now with things such as the Azure Resource Manager, we're able to quickly spin up that infrastructure, deploy our application, test it, and then bring it all back down again. It gives us a much more flexible model to work in. And as I said earlier, a sort of dispersed model, so development teams don't have to be located in one location, one office.
Excellent. All right, so now let's push the boundaries a little bit to something slightly weird and potentially new to people. Now, everyone seems to be talking about Internet of Things. You know, I got on the train this morning, the conductor was like, Internet of Things. I'm like, great. So can you just spend a little bit of time explaining what it is, why anyone would want to do it, and how the Azure platform provides some tools to make that all possible?
Sure. Okay, so the Internet of Things has really blown the web paradigm to another extent. You know, traditionally we would have web applications, we would log in and we would use them. That went to mobile. Now we're bringing in devices, and the devices could be weather monitoring tools, they could be bits of machinery in factories, they could even be mobile devices that we walk around with every day. And it gives, the Internet of Things gives us the ability to collate or ingest large volumes of data. which is important to companies or individuals, and store that data up in the cloud. So the first part is all about data. Let's capture that data from these devices and store them in the cloud. But that's really the first part of the journey. What do we do once we've got that data in the cloud? And we're talking many billions of records, that grows on a daily basis. We want to analyze that data. We want to perhaps even predict the future with that data. And by using Azure, particularly the IoT hub and the IoT suite, we can ingest that data at high volume. We can then transform that data using things like streaming analytics. We can store large volumes of that data, such as the data lake, and then we can predict the future. So we've got machine learning in Azure, which can help us predict the future using the data from the past. And it's really, as I say, it's just sort of exploded the whole internet model.
Fantastic, fantastic. So last question, again on us as an organisation.net, just a little bit about how we can help customers with both of these subjects of traditional app dev and the IoT stuff, and what we've got that's a little bit unique and special.
Okay, so we've got a history in software development, and particularly around Azure application development. We've done many projects, traditional web application projects, but we've also done many projects with the IoT world. It's a new emerging technology, but we've been in there right from the start, and we've helped companies get on board with the whole model, what it can do for them, and they're really starting to see results of some of the projects that we've done. And where they can take it in the future, and it will only get bigger obviously in the future in terms of Azure and the cloud.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Chris.
That's okay.
So there you have it, software development and Internet of Things on Azure. So if you need any more help, then by all means get in touch, or call Chris, or if you really need to, you can call me. So thanks a lot.